Hi, my name is Chris, and I'm the host of the TBL Youth Podcast, the show where we talk to young birders to find out what makes them tick. On this podcast, my guest is Decklan Jordaan. So without further ado, please help me welcome Decklan. Alright, so I want to welcome Decklan to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's a big honor to be on the show. Today I've listened to 3 podcasts actually, which has been very nice. I've been wanting to be on the podcast for a while.
It's great to hear. I'm glad to actually have you as a guest. You've got some really interesting stories, and I'm excited to hear you share them. And firstly, just before we carry on, I just want to wish all our listeners and you especially as well a happy new year. May 2021 be a year of great big lists.
Yes, happy New Year's to everyone. And you, of course.
Cool. So maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? Let us get to know you a bit.
So my name is Declan Jordaan. I've been birding for about 13 years now. I've been also looking for frogs for longer than that, and snakes for about 6 years now. I'm currently studying herpentology at the moment, but I'm hoping to become a bird guide or some guide that takes people around to show them birds, frogs, snakes. Recently I've been getting into my birding a lot, so there's that, and photography as well. I've been doing photography for about 10 years now as well.
So tell us a little bit more about herpentology, because that's a term that I'm not sure a lot of people are aware of. So even I was learning as you were talking about it. So tell me a little bit about it.
So not many people know what herpentology is at all. I get people telling me, like, it's weird, I've never seen someone your age is interested in herbicides. So some people think it's something to do with the study of, like, pesticides, herbs, and all that. But some people think it's diseases. It sounds similar to that one, but it's not. It's the study of reptiles and amphibians. And a lot of people think that reptiles and amphibians are the same thing, but they are also not the same thing with that.
And like when you first said it, I thought immediately snakes. Are you a crazy snake person?
I am very big into my snakes. My mom hates it. She's very scared of snakes. It's one of her biggest fears. She said I could never have snakes, ever. And last year I had 8 snakes in the house because I just rocked up home one day with the snake, and I was like, well, Mom, I can't, like, release it. I'm going to have to keep it now. So that's how I got it in recently this year for my last year for my birthday. Convinced my mom to get me a white-lit pit viper, which was a nice snake. So I've got that. But every snake I see, I'm disappointed if I don't catch it and hold it. I love just the feeling of snakes, catching snakes, and just everything about snakes.
Yeah, that's where you and I are completely different. There's 2 types of people in this world. There's the people that run towards snakes and the people that run away from it. I'm the one that runs away from it.
Yeah, no, I love snakes.
Can you tell us a little bit about like some of the snakes that you've actually had the privilege of seeing in the wild?
So we spoke a little bit earlier about me having a bogey bird, but I don't have a bogey bird. I definitely have a bogey snake, which is the puffadder. I've been looking for snakes for 6 years, and I've never seen a puffadder, and apparently they're one of the most common snakes. However, one of the snakes that I have been privileged to see was actually not too long ago, about 2 months ago, with Adam Krishank. We went to Manyoni, and on the way there we stopped off at Eastern Shores, and we found a forest cobra in the road, and it dipped off the road before we could even get the car there for me to jump out and grab it. But even if it's any snake, forest cobras, the other day I found a Mozambican spitting cobra that was unfortunately hit on the road, but even that one got out and looked at that snake, and if it's any snake, I don't care what it is, I'll try and catch it and try and hold it.
And you seem to have like a passion to you love all these animals that a lot of people shy away from. You also like
Yes.
frogs. Now, a lot of people have this misconception, and I even had this misconception, that all frogs are just slimy, gross looking little creatures that only come out at night. Tell us a bit why you actually love these creatures.
So I'm not sure why I love frogs so much, but my favorite frog is the rain frog, which just looks constantly upset, which I think is adorable. But I've always had the attraction to animals that people don't really like. Like I love frogs, snakes, crocodiles, sharks. Only recently I've been liking sharks, but crocs was my favorite animal growing up until it became more frogs. But I found the only frog that's really slimy are red toads and bullfrogs. The rest aren't necessarily slimy, just wet. They're just moist.
Okay, and then you also said something earlier when we were busy talking before the podcast. You said that we don't actually have any poisonous frogs here in South Africa. We don't have any poisonous frogs. Is that true?
Yeah, we don't really. Well, we have some toads that have got. I guess, yeah, you could call it a poison, but it's nothing that will put you in hospital. It's just a bad taste. Some of them smell bad and they're hard to wash off your hands. Like the red toad has got its skin produces a sticky substance that turns black if you put water on it, and it's not a nice taste at all. It tastes terrible. And the rest of the toads have a gland on their shoulders that produce a white. It's sort of like milk, but it's thicker in texture. But also, if you lick it, it's just going to taste bad. It's not, and they don't give you warts. Frogs don't give you warts. That is a myth.
It sounds like you've got some personal experience with the way you talk about how bitter it is.
Yeah, I think when I was 6, I don't know why, but I just licked my hand after I saw they had poison on it.
You seem like a very crazy person, and I say that with all due respect.
Yes, many people think I'm mentally insane.
But that's all right. As long as you're a crazy person, you're fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you have to be crazy if you like birds and all these other creatures.
yeah, and an immense amounts of patience because you have to wait a lot of the time. You have to wait for hours just to get a 5-second view of a bird, and then even then, we go crazy if we see it, which is great. I love it. I love just sitting and waiting. But at the same time, I love getting out there and like catching something.
And I think also one of the things, going back to the subject of frogs, I think there's a lot of misconception because we aren't actually that exposed to frogs here in South Africa in a sense where we know we can hear the tree frogs at night and we can hear the bullfrogs during the mating season. But how many frogs are actually around us?
So in my garden, I can hear just down the road at least 4 species of frog. But in around Durban, it's mostly going to be painted reed frogs, Natal tree frogs, and guttural toads. That will be your most common ones. But we can get easy 10 species of frog around, maybe more. But also the bullfrogs, they're only found, the closest we can get bullfrogs here are in Zululand. There's one that sounds very similar to the bullfrog, which is the red toad, which at first even I thought it was a bullfrog when I heard it.
Another thing I just want to talk to you about, you are almost at the 500 mark for birds in KZN.
Yes.
How did you manage to get that?
It's been years of birding. I've been birding 13 years only in KZN. I've been out of KZN a handful of times and none of them have been for birding. So I want to go to Cape Town and I want to go bird down there and look for some stuff down there because I think that will be amazing. But I found being in like a club, BirdLife Port Natal, I've been going with bird walks with them for years now. I think being in a club, being on these alert groups, it's so handy and it's so useful because now that we're on them, we're getting all these reports and we can see if we can go up there this weekend and go bird. And I found just sitting and birding even in just your local patches, you'll find some specials there. And just knowing all the little spots and all the habits of the birds, and this field looks nice for this bird, you might be able to get it there. Just doing things like that and just exploring, you'll find a lot just in your little area.
And then also speaking a little bit about that, last year we went into quite a hard lockdown because of coronavirus, and this year we are already in a sort of semi-hard lockdown again. How can we actually grow our birding in our local patch?
So I find just planting the right plants in your garden is very good, because that attracts the insects, which attracts the insect-eating birds, and the flowers also attract the nectar-eating birds. And eat plants with fruit, then you've got your fruit eaters. We've just moved into this garden, so we haven't got anything there. In waterfall, we had fig trees, we had planted an array of plants to attract birds, and we eventually had 114 species of birds in our garden that we had found. And also just different times of year, you'll have different birds, and just sitting down for one day, even if it's just one day, and just looking as hard as you can, seeing what you can get, is very good. But in lockdown, it's kind of hard, because you're used to going out and looking for birds, but lockdown showed me just how much species and what diversity I have in my garden.
And then also, it has passed by a little bit, but I still love talking about Big Birding Day no matter what. And your team is probably one of the strongest teams here in KZN. You guys usually get quite a few species. And how do you guys actually get like upwards of 200 species here in KZN? Because I've been told that it's quite hard to actually do that by good birders.
So it is quite difficult to get to 200 species. Next year we're going to try and get to 220, because what hits you the most is having to travel between spots, because we usually start up at Cumberland, but we try and keep it so we can have it inland, still get birds, but still have it by the coast, because you can get a lot of birds at the coast that you don't get by inland. And it's what we do. We usually plan the day after Birding Big Day for the next year already. So it's planning, sitting down, getting a good plan, going through, and sort of not really taking your time, but not rushing through an area. And it's knowing the birds in your area and what habits you'll get in going to spots that you know from beforehand. So it's a lot of doing research before getting a good high amount of species.
So your practical advice for somebody who wants to get a big list for Big Birding Day is research, a lot of research.
Yes, and we have an expert in our team that knows a lot of birds. Having an expert is also a very good thing to have in a team. So we would get, like, I think it was 150 to 180 species of birds, and then a friend of ours, Garth, joined us. He's been with us now for 3 years, and those 3 years we've got two of them. We've got 190. We've got 196 and 199. And last year we got 214 or 213.
Gee, that's crazy. And then can you maybe tell us some stories of birding trips that you've been on? Some crazy ones. You were telling me about the frigate bird earlier. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So yeah, the frigate bird, we got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then we drove to a petrol garage, got picked up there, met some good birders that day, actually. And then we went to Richards Bay. We got there at about 4:30, 5, somewhere around there. And there was already a birder there, Adam Riley. He was sitting there taking photos, and he said the bird was far across. Someone had already spotted it for us. But we waited about 5 minutes, and the bird flew over us. It was so close that Ian Gordon took his phone out and took full frame photos with his phone. So that was great there. And I think there was eventually about 20 people sitting on the beach there with us. And that was one of my favorites and most memorable birding spots, especially because it's a bird that hasn't been recorded in South Africa, let alone KZN, very often.
And then I think also another one that where I was also present when you came was when we went to go see the black cuckoo.
Yes.
That was such an awesome time. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like?
I liked the black cuckoo because there were a lot of birders there, and I got to speak to a lot of people. I got to learn a few things, especially from Hugh Chittenden. He was there. He was studying the cuckoos there, and I got to speak to him a lot. And he told me about the habits of the black cuckoo, and I went 3 times after that and got the black cuckoo every time with the advice that he gave me, which was very good. Went with friends, got it there, got a lifer for them. And got red-breasted swallow there, which wasn't a lifer, but I've never gotten them that far south, which was very good. But there, what was really nice there, we love going to Mtunzini because it's a great spot for birding, but it's one of the best spots to get green mamba and gaboon adder. And I heard later on that you got green mamba on that day.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, which I've never seen a green mamba before. And that was about 10 minutes after we left, but I only found out by the time we got home. But if I knew 10 minutes before, I would have turned the car around to go and get that green mamba. That would have been the highlight of the day for me, that green mamba. Although the black cuckoo was brilliant because we stopped on the side of the road next to you guys, and you said you saw it there. And then we got it there, and then later on we went around and we got it closer.
Yeah, that was crazy. I still get a little bit of shakes when I think about seeing that green mamba so close.
I would have loved to have him. I probably would have climbed the tree to get to him.
And so can you tell me the last bird that you've dipped on?
The last bird that I dipped on was a rock prattenkool that pitched up in the Umkomaas Valley. We went the day after it was reported and we never got it.
That's disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's such a mega for KZN as well.
Yeah, it's always so disappointing when you go on these trips hoping to actually get it and then you get let down.
Yeah, although we got white-fronted bee-eater, which I hadn't gotten that. Not white-fronted, yes, white-fronted. That far south.
Nice. So we also I don't think we've really covered about how you got into birding itself. You kind of said how you've always just loved creatures and all that, but how did you get into birding itself?
Well, what started with my dad was a spectacled weaver. He heard a spectacled weaver and it took him 3 months to figure out what it was. He thought it was a type of kingfisher. But what got me into birding, I only started after my dad, was a red-fronted tinkerbird flew into our window. And this is in New Germany, so I didn't see this bird very often. I didn't know what it was. Unfortunately, it died. But I picked up, he had an old Roberts book from the early 80s, the late 80s, early 90s, somewhere around there. So I had to flip through a lot of the book, and I was 3, so I couldn't really read. And I had to find a picture of the bird, point it out to my dad, and figure out what it was. And then I showed him the bird, and that red-fronted tinkerbird, I thought the bird was so pretty that, after scrolling through the book, I eventually saw that there's a lot of birds like this, and there's a lot of pretty birds like this, and I wanted to see them all. I said, I want to go out and look for all these birds, and my dad said, sure, we'll go look for some of them, but some of them are found in, like, Botswana, so we can't really go for that. But it all started just with that, and then I always wanted to see the Narina trogon. Then we found one in St. Lucia, and I've seen hundreds ever since. But it's that red-fronted tinkerbird that got me into birding.
Nice. And you said earlier that you don't really have a bogey bird and that you found the African finfoot so many times already.
Yeah, I don't know. People say the African finfoot, it's like you said, it's your bogey bird. But I don't know. I just seem to have very good luck with the finfoot. So far, I mean, we haven't seen him at Sappi again. We've looked for him there and we haven't seen him. But in Ananda Dam, just there by the bridge, we get him almost every time.
I'm jealous. That's all I can say. And so, because it's the beginning of the year, a lot of us, we kind of look towards our bird list now, and we kind of start making plans on how we are going to grow our bird list this year. Which year would you say has been your biggest year in terms of your bird list?
I would say 2020 actually was my biggest year, which is surprising because of the lockdown. And I didn't bird for about 4 months out of the year because my dad wasn't in the country. He was in New Zealand. So I went a couple times with friends, but then because of lockdown, I couldn't go with friends. But most of it was when my dad came back. He said the birding in New Zealand, he says it was so hard to find. I think in New Zealand he was there 4 months and he got 56 species of birds. And he said it was just after that, just the amount of birds that we get in South Africa. He said he was just astonished at what we could get. So he wanted to be birding. He was back here for 1 day back in South Africa, and we had already booked to go to St. Lucia, and we stayed there for about a week. And we've been to St. Lucia 3 times since. And we've been traveling a lot up to Zululand, which is one of my favorite places in the world. I love birding in Zululand, and got a lot of snakes, a lot of frogs. It's got everything there. And because of that, my list has skyrocketed. It's been mostly rarities, though, because I've gotten pretty much all the common birds.
And then I think one last thing before we leave, I just want to find out, are there any spots that you recommend here in KZN that people go to if they want to grow their bird list?
There are a few spots. I recommend St. Lucia. St. Lucia is one of my favorite places in the world, if not my most favorite place. And it's relatively cheap to stay there, which is nice. And I feel very safe there. Just even if walking, the only thing you really have to worry about is the hippos, which can be, especially at night. But there's even species of birds. I've gone there every year since I was 5, and there's still species of birds there that I can get that are new. And there's rarities there quite often. But so St. Lucia, and then Mkuzi, I've been there 3 times. Very nice place. Every time I've gone there, I've gotten new species of birds. And another one is actually a place that I've never been to, in Duma, which I've heard is a very nice place, which is the place that we want to go next. I like Weenan. That's a good spot. Cumberland's a good spot as well.
Cool. So everybody that's in KZN, they need to make a list of all these places and go visit them.
Yes.
Cool. So thanks so much for the chat, Declan. It was really awesome.
Thank you for having me.
And I look forward to chatting to you again soon.
Hopefully we do get to chat soon. Maybe somehow we can go bird somewhere or something.
Yeah, we need to do it.
Yes.
Once again, I just want to thank Decklan for being such an awesome guest and sharing some of his crazy stories. If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to like us on social media and follow us on your favorite podcast player.